Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. And if people trickle in, then that is great. Could I get a note taker for today?
I'm happy to volunteer.
I'd appreciate that very much. All right. First things up, new faces. I don't see any new faces here. So let's hop right into outstanding RFCs. Let's start with decoupled dependencies from the Buildpacks. Start from the bottom, work our way up. Oh, there we go. Now, Jan, I saw that you posted basically a revision here.
Yeah, it's like all the suggestions as neat as that GitHub feature is, just get confusing if they just pile up. So I kind of condensed some of the suggestions I had and worked some other things in. And I think Daniel has already responded, and there was some back and forth.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw this right before I went on lunch. Said, "Oh, I'll look at this right after the working group meeting," and I came back to already a multi reply thread. So I will crack into this afternoon.
It's like I just tried to condense a little better and a little more concrete what I think already have said. Right, it feels pretty concrete. I don't agree to all the definitions. And I actually don't see why we actually do this upfront, because it's like we have all the pieces in our hands, right? We will develop a tool that creates dependency packages of metadata, and we have the libraries that will consume them. So I think we have all the freedom to just discover this and see what's needed. But I tried to get a little more concrete than also on the discussion thread with Daniel, with some concrete things where I tend to see it kind of differently. I'd start with basically, it should be simple to use. So I'd prefer a format that allows somebody who wants to add just a single dependency to just add a single file, right? I want to have, I don't know, I have a constraint that whatever it is that Maven 3.10 will break me and I need 3.9, and that's the only thing I want to change as a user. I don't want to create a directory structure for that. These kind of examples. But I guess we can discuss for like the whole meeting, or actually try to solve it offline, or meet the three of us, maybe Daniel, you and me.
Yeah,
outside, because I don't think that we'll settle this discussion in this meeting.
No, and for sure, especially because I have not gotten the chance to like dig into this back and forth and then just make sure that I've reviewed the suggestions. That's my plan to this afternoon, get dug into it. All right. In that case, then I will do that, and I will contribute to this, and we can either start a thread on the Slack, or potentially find a time to discuss this, or whatever the case may be. We'll figure it out. Awesome. Thank you for putting this together.
Sure.
Next up, we have proposal to publish multi-arch. I don't have any updates on this. I think there was some discussion happening. I think it's probably still happening. So we're, I think that this is still something that we want, and I think Jericho is working on it when he finds time.
Out of curiosity, like, I mean, now Jericho is not there, who might be the best to give an answer. Does somebody have an overview whether this, together with this pack manifest stuff that's going on in the CNB spec, will really deliver a similar experience than Docker build and just create multi-archive images that behave the same? I'd be interested to know if that is really all. It's going to take some time probably, but if that is really all of this, more to do to really proclaim support for multi-arch. Yep, no problem.
I do not know off the top of my head. I think that the only other like large chunk of work that I can think of outside of that is like ensuring that we either provide or build dependencies in a way that's compatible with ARM as well.
Oh yeah, sure. All build packs, of course, need to
Yeah.
provide the dependencies in that fashion. That's true. That's easy for helpers, but might be more difficult for any kind of real dependencies.
Yeah, I do think though, for the most part, like as part of our sort of previous work to change how we hosted our dependencies, like most large projects anyway already have ARM64 stuff that we would just have to point at and call it a day. Okay, if there's nothing new on this right now, then I can't see any reason to keep doing this. And then finally, we have a new RFC. It's proposal to introduce new Graal VM build pack. And there's some discussion on this, but I have not seen this proposal at all. So it's proposing to retire the old Graal, the current Graal VM in favor of a Graal community and add a new Graal. Oh gosh, Graal Oracle. I don't know if there is any discussion that people want to have here. If there is, by all means.
I assume that the discussion on this topic, on this RFC, will be mostly asynchronous, given that the majority of Java maintainers do not synchronously join this meeting.
I think that sounds about right. I think the only thing, hold on. Oh, never mind. I think then the only thing that this would need is the CLA signing and approvals from Java maintainers. Okay.
For what it's worth, is that already in the right location? Is that in the Java specific RFC?
Yeah, I just checked that.
Yeah, it is. All right.
Surprised it didn't come up with a reviewer then. I'll look at that later.
Are you, like, to me, it looks like it's at the top level.
I see it under text Java, but here, I'll check. Yeah, I see it right here. For Graal VM JDK. So I think that everything's all set up for this to, I don't know that, to be honest, this working group ever needs to talk about this unless there is call for discussion on it. I think it'll go through the Java maintainer channels. Okay, anything else? Do we want to have any more discussion about any of the RFCs that we just went through? Okay. Next up then, we have C&D updates. I don't think that I have any major C&D updates at the top of mind. Okay. Are there any major project updates? No? All right. Are there any open mic discussions or questions? Anything anyone wanted to talk about?
I was wondering how the UBI work is going. I was kind of involved a little bit in the stack creation, and I haven't been keeping up to date since then, so I was just looking for an update.
I did post on, think on Friday. I was out on Monday, so I haven't had a chance to see if there's progress on those PRs, but I posted a number of PRs that are open related to that. As of a few days ago, when I last checked, the status was we'd gotten the base stack. The stack was there. We're working on the polling mechanism for how the stacks will be updated. That's what Costas is currently working on. It's going to look different in that instead of looking for the USNs, which is I think an Ubuntu Debian kind of thing, it's going to look for like updates to the UBI containers, because basically when there's updates to be had, there'll be a new container. So then we'll trigger a build of the stack. We managed to get, and thanks to help from Force, to get the build packlist builder landed. Unfortunately, the automation then immediately reverted the life cycle, which is why I think there's last time a little bit of discussion about it'd be great if there was a published life cycle 17, because it basically updates it to the last published version as opposed to the last version, and so it went back. So as soon as that gets published, that will be resolved. That didn't, since we actually had one version that was published with the right life cycle, we could use that to progress the integration testing on the UBI extension itself, which is good. I think I saw a notification that somebody had reviewed and there were some comments and Costas was going to update, so that's good. The builder, which would have the node extension, I think that one might been, people might have been waiting until we resolve the life cycle issue, because it'll apply similarly to the one on the build pack lists side of things. Otherwise, a number of the PRs I posted were related to moving functionality into libnode.js so that we can have one copy that's used by the extension and the other build packs. And I guess the other significant PR that I opened was to integrate, basically reuse more of the existing node build pack. We discovered in the integration tests, which is one of the great things, is we added those integration tests. We weren't providing the functionality with the environment variables. So there's a fairly simple change to the existing build pack where, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do nothing, we do nothing except for the part that has the build packs, and that can then reuse the like, it's not just the code in that like the build phase, but it's also code in, like, there's some extra files pulled in and stuff like that to add into the layers and all that. And that lets us pass all of the integration tests that we saw on the node engine itself. So I'd open that up and I think there was some discussion, I believe Victoria had taken a look at it. It was kind of like, are we comfortable doing that, or do we want to have a separate build pack? And so I haven't seen if there's been any more discussion kind of like on how people feel about that. It's the simplest way to reuse the most is to have one, but I can understand the sort of potential concern.
On our part, Rob and I did take a look at the full sort of UBI base builder. I can't use the word full there because that's an overloaded word. But the one with the extensions, the biggest problem that I'm running into is that it's all just still so cutting edge for C&B that like I can't get a pack build to work because I'm being told that extension usage for builders is an experimental feature, and embarrassingly, I must admit, I actually don't know how to enable the experimental operations in pack. I spent a little time Googling and like looking around, and I couldn't figure it out, to be perfectly honest. So I couldn't verify that the builder was actually functioning the way that we wanted it to through the smoke tests. Now,
So
whether
I thought the smoke tests would run though. Maybe that's like when I ran them locally, maybe it's because I'd already, like, there's a command you can run to turn on it's like a pack command that will turn on experimental features. Maybe I'd already run that, and that's why the smoke tests ran.
if that's the case, I would just need that, and then I could verify that that's the
Okay.
case. We
Yeah.
would have to then modify some scripts a little bit here and there, and I'm not sure. Like, I guess at that point I'm like I'm kind of would want to like wait for lifecycle 17 to be out, so that we're at least like, even if we are like shifting like how we build this, we're at least reliably getting updates out of this. I figure you can't really do that much harm with a build pack list builder, but like with an actual builder, people might think that we are actually starting to support this in a capacity that we are not sort of up and running with yet.
Right, and I guess it makes sense. The build packless one works because it doesn't have the extension built into it. But yeah, we'll need that extra. And thanks, Jen, for pasting that in there. Yeah, it's basically like that pack config experimental just needs to be added. And we must do that in our integration tests or in some of the stuff that we do in the extension testing.
Yeah, also if you're just sort of running it locally, you probably set it at the global config level. So like when you're locally testing it, it just works for you because it's a per machine setting. Forrest, not to kind of take us off into too much of a debate, but I think it's probably fine to have experimental features in the like clearly marked experimental UBI extension in the Paketo community. And I would argue that it's probably even beneficial to do that because the CNB folks are looking for feedback on experimental features in general, right? Like part of the way they go from experimental to full is by like getting feedback and, you know, having a concrete example that you can point to in the open source that's clearly marked as like experimental for now. I think that's fine. I wouldn't have any worries about like putting in the experimental true in CI for some stuff like this.
Oh, well, if that's the case, then by all means, I'm not going to block that then. I do not have strongly held opinions on that. I was just like, I was trying to sort of figure out my way around it, and I was like, I'm a little gun shy on this because I don't quite know how this all works. But if I can get it to if I can get a set of smoke tests running locally for me, then that's what I will be happy with. So I will try and get that done. I don't know, later today. I think Rob, you had a couple of just structural things that you wanted to look at, so those are probably more worth your time than my pack experimental doesn't work and I don't know how that works, because I now know how that works. So we're getting there.
Yeah, Costas addressed most of my comments, like structural comments about the PR for the UBI extension. I didn't run them. So like Forrest ran them, and you know, I'm just looking at the kind of like code side of things. I think it's fine. I mean, it's also like, you know, it's like a community feature, it's experimental to start with. Like, I think it's fine to kind of like iterate our way through it. Like there's a lot of like coupling and dependencies and ordering. So it's going to be a bit gross for a while, but I think we need to like put the pieces in place and eventually we can like chip away at it. So like we'll probably end up committing commented out smoke tests until the Node.js build pack actually works, and then we'll uncomment the smoke tests. But I don't think we should leave every PR open, right? Like it's just not helpful.
Yeah, I'm ready to close it and like get something out there. I just wanted something that wasn't going to have to be like every 2 days, you know, Michael, you have to put in a PR that you then have to ping me on, and then I have to go like look at it. I'm trying to reduce the amount of relaying that's happening.
Yeah, I
talking
think that,
about
like
feedback to upstream, were you able to provide some? I realized that in the middle of doing, you realized that there's kind of a disparate set of features between Buildpacks and extensions, where you realized, oh, we just need also a build pack for it. Maybe that's actually worth pushing back upstream if extensions should just be allowed to do something in addition to what Buildpacks can do, but still also act as a build pack. That could be a tremendous change for upstream. So maybe that would be worth reporting, actually, if the problem still persists.
I think Ozzy would know for sure. He'd mentioned that was something he was going to mention in terms of like maybe they should come as a pair, because there are some things, at least with like the switching of the run image, we can't set environment variables. Like all we can do is give it an image. We can't do anything else. And that's where like for the Java one, he figured out that, hey, we're always going to have two. And for the Node one from the beginning, I tried to reuse the existing one as much as possible. Like it already uses the common code in the detect phase to set up the build plan. And so that's where like the PR I have now also then does the same thing to say, well, we're going to reuse the non-node installation part. So just to say, like, from the node side, it was like always, hey, yeah, having these two work together makes sense. So I think we could find that that is the case, and we can confirm with Ozzy that he's actually proposed that.
Well, thanks for the update. You have a kind of unique contribution experience in that you're contributing to builders, stacks, extensions, Buildpacks. So it's kind of interesting to hear how your experience is going. Have you found the feedback loop with maintainers and looking at documentation and stuff to be okay? Or is there anything that we could be doing to help you more?
I guess, as always, it would be really nice if the next day after I submitted a PR it was reviewed. I understand that's not realistic. So, you know, it is a cycle. Other than that, I found it quite interesting. Like, there's, you know, you really get to appreciate how much automation and how much is there versus the, you know, naively you could say, hey, let's just build our own build packs, right? And the reason we didn't go that way is, like, there's lots in there that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And I'm just learning the more, like, there's more than even I would have imagined in terms of the automation and how all these things work together. And so it's been an interesting process to learn those different things. And like the functional part, it's almost like there's not a lot of functionality, but there's a ton of this automation to keep the whole thing hanging together, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, the automation is wild.
Yeah, and some of those are like, you know, I don't know if you could go read it somewhere, but like learning that the scripts are automatically copied from a common set and will clobber your ones. It's like, yeah, I didn't think about that. So like my earlier PRs probably would have clobbered themselves, but I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if you could write that down so that everybody would understand that up front anyway, right? Because there's a lot there. Sometimes you really got to just go through the process to learn it.
Yeah, that conversation topic has come up like periodically, and it's an interesting one, right? It's like, what do you define as the surface area of your community product, right? Like, you know, Packet is a library. We treat that as like a surface area that anyone should be able to take that library and build a Packet style build pack. Same for, like, you know, Libpack. But the CI, I don't know, we don't really think of that as a product, right? It's just like, it's the glue that holds everything together. But it's like 80% of the work of the build packs is the automation. But it's also, yeah, it's not really documented. And it is, I mean, remember when I joined the team, it was like a lot of learning on that side. I think just riffing on this, one thing I would be motivated to do once the dust has settled a little bit on the structure of the UBI stuff is I'd want to figure out how much of the changes to the automation we can like backport upstream and abstract so that you don't have to maintain your own, basically a fork of our automation, right? So like stuff like the switching out USNs for UBIs, right? I think that would be something that ultimately we should be able to go back upstream so that you can get all the other benefits of the changes to CI, right? As we fix bugs or improve performance or whatever, it would be great to get those automatically rolled out. But to do that, we're going to have to figure out the abstraction of like UBIs versus USNs. And the same is going to be true for like extensions as a concept, right? We don't have automations for extensions. So we're going to have to figure out like, how does that fit into the shared CI? But I think it's worth doing.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's good because we don't want to, yeah. So that'll be, you know, I think, like you said, once the dust settles and we figured out a bunch of the other stuff, then it's like, okay, like the libnode.js, I'd like to be depending on our extensions to depend on as much common stuff as possible versus something which is unique to that one particular platform. Even I'll ask one question because like this is one of the things we're going to look at next is it looks like the integration tests for each of the build packs could run on multiple stacks. Like, so for example, the npm start build pack, we'd like to get to the point where it runs on Jammy and runs on the UBI stacks. Is my intuition there that it was designed at one point to do that?
It was, yeah, it was designed that way so that we could run it on like different flavors of Ubuntu. So like we could run it on both Jammy and Bionic, but I don't see any reason. That might not be true. I don't know that I think of right off the top of my head why we couldn't run something like GME UBI. But I also haven't thought about it at all. So
I think there'll be a few tweaks, like just extensions it doesn't necessarily know about, and then maybe saying like only use this extension for this stack. But those are the kind of things. Anyway, it sounds like the answer is like it was kind of set that way. So we'll be trying to figure part of that out as we go forward. Like right now, one of the things Costas is going to look at is actually just running those all manually. You know, with the current integration tests in the extension, I think we've got it to the point where we've got the same integration tests that you have for the Node engine, because we used it as the inspiration. But there's a whole bunch of integration tests which go much further than that in all the other build packs. So our next step is to go through and make sure that all those run successfully, which I'm hoping will, since they just use the same build packs. But we want to validate that. And then once we do that, we'd want to like, hey, could we actually have them run? Because that would be nice to have that coverage too.
Yeah, I just put this in the chat, but just to kind of like add more evidence or ammunition to this topic, the Jericho from Rapid7 like submitted a bunch of PRs to the Python build packs and I think to some of the Go ones to support running on the custom stack, right, that he created. And so the abstraction should just work, right? Like in terms of like a build pack being tested against a builder, not a stack, but a builder, right? That's just the interface that they run on. Like once you have a builder for the UBI build pack list, yeah, you can just add it to the line in the, I linked in the chat to the example for CPython, but the same would be true for npm start or anything like any other build pack. Just add a line and the script will pretty much just pick it up and run it. And the automation, once it's all there, will like parallelize across all of the stacks or all of the builders that are present in the config. So it should all, mechanically, it should all just work. Whether it actually like, works in your builder, obviously that's like you feel to figure out how that works.
I think the only thing that you're going to struggle with is that like for some of like, you know, NPM start or whatever, we hand like built versions of different build packs. And so you'd have to hand in a different build pack into the build order. Because you do like a pack build with build packs.
Yeah, and we'll have that.
Yeah, you'd have to get a different order dependent on what builder you're running, but you can also just like you can identify the build. It's a string passed in at some point, so you'd be able to identify that at the beginning.
Yeah, and we have evidence, or we have examples of doing that as well, or at least we used to before we stopped supporting Bionic, because we had like we wouldn't. Some of the tests would test the upgrade, right? So they would say like, oh, if I'm on a Bionic builder, skip this test, and then if I'm on a Jammy builder, then I'm going to go and run the whole test, like, you know, deploy on Bionic and then upgrade to Jammy. So you may have to go back through the Git history for that because we probably removed it. But if you go back 6 months, you'll probably see examples of like integration tests asserting on the build pack, the builder ID.
Yeah, when you get to that point, feel free to reach out to us and we can send you examples of what we're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other discussion topics that people would like to discuss, I guess? Great. In that case, I think we can call it.
Great. Bye.
See you. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you.